Their marriage was never born out of love, it was a calculated decision wrapped in formality, duty, and quiet sacrifice. On the surface, it looked like the perfect union between two respectable families, a powerful millionaire groom and a graceful, humble bride. Behind closed doors, however, it was nothing more than a contract, a promise made to satisfy elders, protect reputations, and strengthen business ties. Love was not part of the agreement. The man, a self-made millionaire, was known for his cold logic and discipline. Having climbed his way to success through heartbreak and betrayal, he had built walls around his heart that no one could break. When his parents insisted that he marry the daughter of a longtime family friend, he agreed, not because he wanted companionship, but because he wanted peace. It was easier to say yes to marriage than to argue against the expectations of his family. The woman, on the other hand, entered the marriage with quiet hopes. She had heard the stories, that her husband was distant, emotionless, and too focused on his empire to care about love. Still, deep down, she believed that marriage could soften him. She believed that patience and kindness could bridge the gap between two strangers bound by a ring. Her dreams were simple, a husband's smile, a home filled with warmth, and a future built on mutual respect. But from the very first day, she realized this was not the fairy tale she imagined. He treated her with polite distance, avoiding conversations that touched on emotions. They shared meals but not laughter. They shared a house but not a home. Nights passed in silence, the kind of silence that screamed louder than words. He buried himself in work, returning late and leaving early, while she filled her lonely hours with reading, prayer, and quiet tears. What hurt her most was not his absence, but his indifference. He never yelled or criticized, he simply didn't care. To him, she was a duty fulfilled, nothing more, nothing less. Yet she stayed, not because she was weak, but because she believed that even in a loveless marriage, kindness could plant the seeds of change. For 3 long years, she carried that hope in her heart. A marriage of convenience had trapped them both in silence, but neither realized that silence was only the beginning of a love story that would one day burn brighter than either of them ever expected. 3 years. That's how long they lived together under the same roof, as strangers bound by vows. Their marriage existed in form but not in spirit. The mansion was grand, yet inside, every corner echoed with silence. The husband and wife rarely spoke, and when they did, it was only about routine matters, dinner times, family visits, or business events. Conversations were short, measured, and painfully formal, like two colleagues forced to share a space they didn't choose. Each day began the same way. He left early for work, his footsteps fading down the hallway before she even opened her eyes. The maids brought her breakfast alone, and she spent her mornings tending to small things, flowers in the garden, quiet reading in the library, or helping with charity work. When he returned late at night, he often found her asleep on the couch, a book resting on her lap and her face lit softly by the dim glow of the lamp. He would pause for a second, watching her, something stirring faintly inside him, but pride and fear always silenced that emotion. He would turn away, retreating into his study, where work was easier to face than feelings. For her, the silence became both a comfort and a curse. At first, she tried to reach out, gentle smiles, light conversations, thoughtful gestures. She'd make his favorite dishes, wait for him at dinner, or leave small notes of care. But every effort met with polite distance. He wasn't cruel, he was simply detached, living in his own guarded world. Eventually, she stopped trying. The walls between them grew thicker with every passing day, built not of anger, but of unspoken pain. Friends often asked why she stayed, why she didn't walk away from such a cold life. Her answer was always the same, because love doesn't always shout, sometimes, it waits. She believed in patience, in the quiet strength of loyalty. Deep down, she sensed there was more to his silence, wounds he never spoke of, scars hidden beneath his calm exterior. And so, 3 years passed in emotional stillness. Birthdays came and went. Anniversaries slipped by without celebration. Yet in those quiet years, something invisible was forming, a bond not of romance, but of endurance. Neither realized it then, but those silent days were shaping their hearts for the storm of emotion that would soon awaken them both, when he would finally decide to break the silence and claim the love he had ignored for far too long. Behind his calm, composed exterior, the millionaire carried wounds no one could see, scars that time hadn't healed, only buried deeper. To the world, he was a symbol of success, confident, decisive, and untouchable. His name opened doors, his presence commanded respect. But when the crowds disappeared and the mansion lights dimmed, he faced the quiet truth of his life, that all his wealth and achievements could not protect him from the loneliness he had built around himself. Years before his marriage, he had loved once, deeply, foolishly, and completely. That love had taught him everything he thought he wanted to know about devotion, and betrayal. The woman he trusted most had used his love as a ladder, climbing toward her ambitions while pretending to care. When she finally left him for someone richer, something inside him shattered. From that day, he vowed never to let emotions control him again. He turned his heartbreak into power, his pain into discipline. Work became his escape, success his armor. So when his family arranged his marriage, he accepted, not for affection, but for convenience. It was easier to marry a woman chosen by his parents than to risk falling in love again. He convinced himself that distance was safety, that indifference was strength. He didn't mean to be cruel, he was simply protecting himself from the past. Every time his wife looked at him with kindness, he saw the reflection of the woman who once betrayed him. Every gentle smile from her reminded him how love had once destroyed him. But there was something different about his wife, something quiet yet powerful. She never demanded his attention, never complained about his coldness. Her silence wasn't weakness, it was grace. She carried herself with dignity even when ignored, never lowering her self-respect to earn his affection. Unknowingly, her patience began to challenge his fears. Some nights, when the loneliness crept in despite his pride, he would find himself standing outside her room, listening to the faint sound of her prayers or her soft breathing. He wanted to knock, to say something, anything, but the words always froze in his throat. He couldn't let her see the broken man behind the millionaire image. His hidden pain was the invisible wall between them, one built from heartbreak, pride, and fear. Yet, beneath that wall, his heart still beat for something real. He just didn't know that soon, the very woman he had kept at a distance would be the one to heal the wounds he had spent a lifetime hiding. It happened slowly, then all at once, the shift he never saw coming. For 3 years, the millionaire had lived in emotional silence, convinced that detachment was safety. But the universe has a way of testing even the coldest hearts. One evening, at a family event, he saw something that stirred emotions he thought had died long ago, his wife, laughing softly with another man. The man was charming, kind, and clearly taken by her warmth. Their conversation was innocent, but the ease with which she smiled, a smile he hadn't seen in years, struck him like lightning. For the first time, he saw her not as his duty, but as a woman, graceful, intelligent, and deeply human. And for the first time, he felt something dangerous, jealousy. That night, he couldn't sleep. The image of her laughter haunted him, echoing through the empty halls of his home. He realized how little he knew about her, her favorite flowers, her dreams, her fears. She had been beside him all this time, yet he had treated her like a shadow. Now, the thought of losing her filled him with a fear deeper than any business loss or financial risk he had ever faced. Days turned into silent torment. He began noticing the small things, how she carried herself with quiet confidence, how others admired her kindness, how she never spoke ill of him even when she had every right to. Slowly, regret began to replace his pride. He started coming home earlier, lingering at the dinner table, trying to start conversations. She was polite but distant now, the same way he had once been. The roles had reversed, he was the one waiting for her attention, craving the warmth he had taken for granted. The turning point was complete when he saw her preparing to leave for a charity trip abroad, something she had organized without consulting him. She was independent now, no longer waiting for his affection or approval. Watching her walk away to the car, he realized the depth of his mistake. He had pushed away the only person who had ever loved him without conditions. For the first time, the proud millionaire felt powerless. He didn't just want her to stay, he needed her. The silence that once comforted him now felt suffocating. And in that moment, he made a quiet vow, that he would no longer let fear dictate his heart. The man who once refused to touch love was now ready to fight for it, even if it meant starting from nothing. After years of emotional distance and silence, the moment finally arrived when the millionaire decided that he could no longer ignore the truth. His wife was the most precious part of his life, and he had been blind to it. This realization didn't come suddenly like a fairy tale lightning strike. It was forged through months of quiet observation, introspection, and a gnawing fear of losing her. The woman who had endured his coldness, shown patience, and remained dignified now stood as a reminder of everything he had taken for granted. He began to act differently, but cautiously at first. Small gestures replaced indifference, a cup of tea prepared just the way she liked it, an early morning walk together, and heartfelt apologies for years of neglect. Every touch, every word, was deliberate, meant to communicate what he could not say in the past, that he loved her deeply and sincerely. This was not a performance, it was a transformation. The man who had once feared intimacy was learning to embrace it, guided by the quiet strength of the woman he had ignored. At first, she was wary. Years of loneliness and emotional neglect had taught her that actions mattered more than words. She noticed the change, but her heart guarded itself. Slowly, however, his consistency broke through the walls she had built to protect herself. The same home that had once echoed with silence now felt alive with connection. Laughter returned to the dining room, conversations flowed freely, and shared glances carried meaning. The turning point came when he finally spoke the words he had never dared before, not out of obligation, but from an urgent need to claim what had always been his by heart, if not by action. He admitted his past mistakes, acknowledged her patience, and vowed never to repeat the neglect. This was not just a claim of possession, but a claim of devotion, a promise to cherish her, respect her, and love her unconditionally for the rest of their lives. In claiming her, he also claimed himself. The millionaire who had buried his emotions, who had built walls around his heart, was now vulnerable. Love, which he had once feared, had become his guiding force. And the wife, who had endured years of silence, finally received the recognition, affection, and companionship she deserved. Together, they began rewriting their story, a story of redemption, patience, and the extraordinary power of delayed love. Their journey showed that even the longest winters of the heart could thaw, and that true love, when claimed sincerely, can heal wounds, transform lives, and create a bond stronger than any distance or fear.